You're listening to the Greeks Gridiron, live with Ethan Haristadoulou.
What's up, everyone, and welcome back to more of the Greeks Gridiron. I am Ethan Haristadoulou, and today, with week 2 of the preseason wrapped up, I'm going through my 32 takeaways from this second week, giving you one thought from each of the 32 teams in the league. Whether it's positive, whether it's negative, a specific player, a position group, everything in between. I'm giving it a random thought here and there, just something I took note of while going through the game's tape. So make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and comment down below something that you took away from this week, whether it was your favorite team that you were watching, or maybe you just happened to be catching a game and you saw something you liked or didn't like. Let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys took away from this week's slate of games. So in order, based off schedule, we'll start with the Bears. The Ones offense felt a little bit like their feet was in the mud at times, especially the first team, and it was a little bit concerning. I felt like plays were taking a little bit longer to develop, and even at times, Justin Fields felt a little bit slow to essentially make his decision on what he wanted to do. I will say, though, that Velus Jones Jr. is definitely carving out a role for this team. He had 31 yards on a kick return and 47 yards on 2 punt returns. Solid day for him. Exciting to see the young guy take a solid step in the right direction and find himself at least a good role within special teams to kick things off for his career. Now, looking at the Seahawks here, Tariq Woolen and a couple other guys really stood out to me during this game, but Woolen is an absolute freak on the field. He had 2 tackles, he had 42 snaps altogether, one of the highest amongst all the players on the team. He stands out, and you can see him flying around the field. You see his athleticism. The guy's a monster at 6'4", running a 4.26. It's unbelievable the type of player that he is, and he's an athletic freak, and he stands out on defense, and I'm excited to see how things turn out for his career, because he was someone that, despite being so raw, I was very high on. And then you look at DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. Talk about a 1-2 punch combo. Back-to-back weeks showing up and looking really good for the Seahawks, who, coming off of the retirement of Chris Carson, need to really establish a new backfield. A combined 59 yards off of 10 carries and 56 yards of 6 receptions. A solid duo and a little bit of glimmer of hope after, again, the retirement of Chris Carson. It's going to take time for the offensive line to truly gel for the Panthers, and I'm hoping that it gets better with time that goes on. Obviously, we just heard yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't remember exactly when it came out, that Baker Mayfield has won the quarterback competition, and Sam Darnold will be sitting on the bench to start the season. So with all the pressure that I felt like I was seeing from the offensive line, that definitely needs to get cleaned up a bit. But I like that Baker Mayfield is going to be QB1 going into the season, because I do think he is a faster and better decision maker than Sam Darnold, and I think it's going to end up working in favor of an offensive line that isn't necessarily at the best spot right now, still trying to figure itself out, with a rookie tackle and, a kind of few other players here and there kind of trying to figure out, like, carving out roles and who's going to start where. But first team offensive line did not look awesome to me this past week, and hopefully that gets better going into week number 3. For the Patriots, it's definitely going to be a defensive-led team, without a doubt. The offense took a few drives to get rolling, but it was the defense that really impressed me throughout the game. Linebackers looked pretty solid. The front 7, especially with 5 sacks on the night, was really good. And, we were getting solid pass breakups from Jonathan Jones, Mack Wilson, guys that are going into more important roles again. Obviously, Mack Wilson being a trade brought over to New England, and then Jonathan Jones, who was primarily a slot guy before the departure of a handful of cornerbacks the last couple of years, is now going to have an opportunity to really step into like a cornerback 2 role. But overall, a solid game defensively for the Patriots, and for all the question marks surrounding the offense and play calling and what have you, defense is starting to settle some nerves, I would say. Looking at the Saints, special teams was definitely the star of the night for this unit. Blake Gillikin, man, the punter, averaged 59.4 yards on his 5 punts with a long of 81. Such a good night that he was popped for a random drug test literally the next morning. So with that in mind, coupled with Tony Jones, who on 2 kick returns averaged 26.5 yards, and Kirk Merritt, who had 2 kick returns averaging 42 yards a kick, special teams feeling like a strong point for this Saints team. And special teams is one of those things that you can really look at and definitively say, yeah, all right, this unit looks really good. Because typically you're looking for the guys that are going to start on special teams through the entire preseason. And those guys that stand out typically are the guys that get the jobs. So special teams for the Saints looks like it could be threatening going into this season. For the Packers, cornerback Micah Abernathy, man. I don't know if you guys saw that interception on the sideline. awesome play by him. Couple that with the fact he had 4 tackles, a tackle for loss. He also had a pass breakup as well, showing some good signs and some good depth for this cornerback room over there in Green Bay. Romeo Doubs also looked awesome. I think he has a real highlight potential. It's going to take him a little bit to clean up some drops and really become like the wide receiver I think he can truly be. But going 3 for 5 on the night, 24 yards and a touchdown. He had some good catches so far throughout the preseason in general. He's trending in the right direction. He's just got to clean it up and be more consistent. And then Jordan Love looked a little bit better. Consistently off still, but overall, it was not last week. We'll say that. For the Texans, the quarterback room altogether, strong performance from all 3 of the guys. Davis Mills, obviously quarterback 1. He went 10 of 17 for 96 yards. He had a touchdown. Kyle Allen went 9 for 12, 71 yards and a TD. And then Jeff Driscoll, back-to-back weeks of comeback victories for him. 3 of 3 on for 17 yards and a touchdown on a long drive to end the game, essentially. Hats off to all 3 of the quarterbacks here. If you're the Texans, kind of a good problem to have is, do we carry 3 quarterbacks going into the season? Do we stash Jeff Driscoll away on the practice squad? How do they end up handling that? But right now, 3 solid guys with Davis Mills at the head of them. You have to feel, despite losing what was supposed to be your quarterback of the future just last year, probably feel pretty good about your quarterback room. For the Rams, wide receiver Lance McCutcheon, back-to-back unbelievable weeks for him. I mean, you want to talk about Cooper Kupp and Allen Robinson being wide receivers 1 and 2, and then, it's kind of everyone else like Van Jefferson and then the rest. Someone who is fighting for like that 4 through 6 spot. Lance McCutcheon, probably the top candidate for being like wide receiver 4 right now based off the play that he's having. 5 of 6 targets his way, 96 yards. He had a 29-yard reception. I mean, he's everywhere, I guess is the best way you could really put it. He has looked really good so far this preseason, and at this point, you've got to think that he's going to be making this roster, and if he hasn't locked in wide receiver 4 yet, he's definitely well on his way to doing so. Looking at the Broncos, definitely not a great day for Denver. The defense really could not stop anything, and Brett Rippon was really like the highlight of the night. I guess you could say he was 22 of 26, 191 yards and a touchdown. The running game did not really look great either. 17 carries altogether for 34 yards total. It was definitely an ugly night for the offense of the Broncos after having a pretty solid performance last week. This one was kind of like a comeback down to earth moment. Obviously, it's not the ones, but what they did have going on out there just did not look good and was not really inspiring. For the Bills, talk about looking like you're in midseason form. The Bills just kind of came in. Josh Allen got the start, went 3 for 3, 45 yards, walked the ones right down the field and scored. Wide receiver Khalil Shakir, really looking good, and someone who I was really excited about going to Buffalo post-draft. And I mean, going 3 for 3, he had 59 yards, a 25-yard reception for the long on the day. The Bills just look like they're ready to roll. There's a handful of teams right now that look like they're already in midseason form. Josh Allen had that like crazy spin around and then throw to the end zone. The Bills are going to be one of those teams, man. Everyone's riding high on them, and it's kind of hard to argue against just how good this team is looking right now. Looking at the Lions, running back Justin Jackson had himself a pretty good game. I was really impressed with what he did. He had 7 carries for 54 yards. Every run he had felt pretty strong, and it looks like there's a QB2 battle brewing over there in Detroit as well. Tim Boyle was 12 of 15. He had 99 yards and a touchdown himself. Then David Blau, 16 of 22. He had 76 yards. He had a touchdown and a pick. But a good little battle between the backup quarterbacks here to figure out who's going to hold that backup spot for Jared Goff there. But interesting nonetheless to see that kind of starting to brew up there over in Detroit. For the Colts, safety Nick Cross, man. For a team that just lost Kari Willis this offseason to retirement, talk about nailing on a guy in the draft, so at least in the early showing so far. He shows leadership. I saw him, John, at number 25, the corner up for the Colts. He has good tackling. I mean, good coverage in the end zone. He broke up a pass to save a touchdown. He's showing everything you want to see from a safety, and I'm really excited about him. I am a Colts fan, kind of obvious with, you see a couple jerseys back there. Got Andrew Luck and Manning to my left over here. But as a Colts fan, pretty excited for a guy like Nick Cross. Colts have had kind of like an odd relationship with safeties the last like handful of years, I would say. So getting a guy like Nick Cross who looks so good so early on, I like his style of play. And then quarterback Sam Ehlinger, awesome day for him. 9 of 11, 136 yards, couple of touchdowns, another strong game coming from him. After having such a up and down kind of showing last year, it's exciting to see him look comfortable and feel like he knows what he's doing in this offense. For the Commanders, front seven definitely brought some good pressure against the Chiefs' first team, so that was nice to see from them. Mahomes is just really a master at extending plays, and there's really not much you can do when he gets rolling, and he really got rolling in this game. The offensive line felt like it was lacking a little bit of pop, though, from them, so definitely something to keep an eye on. It felt like they were kind of getting beaten to the punch, and that'll be something we'll have to watch as we go through. Obviously with a new quarterback in play, offense is a little bit different this year, so we'll see. But Terry McLaurin and Jahan Dotson, excited to see how those two end up. They looked good. They both had a couple of receptions apiece, not a ton of yardage, but showed some really good, run after the catch moves and elusiveness. It's going to be fun watching that duo kind of evolve as a pairing. For the Chiefs, as I mentioned already briefly, offense just kind of continues to roll. Patrick Mahomes went out there and just did his thing. He lit it up. He was 12 of 19, 162 yards. He had a couple of touchdowns. Another team that they look like they're in preseason form and ready to go. And good luck to everyone trying to stop them. Everyone was real worried about this team and, losing Tyreek Hill. And we had Patrick Mahomes throwing to wide receiver Justin Watson, who was hauling in massive catches. A 39-yard reception kind of highlighted his day. I don't think the Chiefs are going anywhere. I really don't. Looking at the Bucs, offensively, it was ugly. Brady's been gone. He's the QB1. So, not really that big of a takeaway realistically, but they are losing offensive linemen at a rapid clip. So hopefully the injury bug lets go of its bite for Tampa Bay. But we were seeing some drop passes, some bad offensive line play, not really a ton to write home about. Defensive pressure was good though. They took down Malik Willis 3 times, 4 sacks altogether. Olakunle Fatukasi had 1.5 sacks on the day. So a solid showing on the defensive side, but the offensive was not looking too well. Malik Willis for the Titans, pretty impressed with how he looked. Again, solid outing. He had some ups, he had some downs. He was 7 of 17, so a lot of incompletions for what you'd want to see, but he had 80 yards and a touchdown, so he was still able to score despite his struggles through the passing game, but he did have 5 carries to 42 yards. It felt like a little bit of a comeback to earth moment for him after having kind of a dazzling week 1 in the preseason, but overall, you're getting from him what you kind of expected. A really athletic quarterback who can make some throws, make some big plays with his legs. But the one thing I really like is that it doesn't feel like he's bailing out of the pocket too much, despite the fact that he's a super athletic guy and he's just trying to beat people with his athleticism. He looks like he wants to throw the ball, and that's really good to see from someone who some people are considering, he's more of a runner than anything else. How good is he as a passer? He has some really good throws. He needs to rein in the accuracy a bit, but I like what I'm seeing from him so far, and as a Colts fan, pretty jealous. I like Malik Willis. For the Vikings, meh night for both of the quarterbacks here. Combination of missed throws, some drops from wide receivers. Wasn't anything super special. Kellen Mond was 10 of 20 for 82 yards. Sean Mannion a little bit better on the completion side at 10 of 15 for 65 yards. But again, nothing too crazy to write home about. 49ers, really impressed by the tight end Tanner Hudson. He looked really good. He had 5 receptions off of 6 targets, 43 yards. It felt like every time he had the ball going his way, he was making a nice catch. And one specifically that stuck out to me, he had cornerback Nate Hairston on him. He was able to make a really nice play and some seriously tight coverage, getting close to the goal line there. Really stood out, and I feel like he is definitely fighting for that tight end 2 spot. For the Steelers, the quarterback triple threat is obviously well underway at this point. All 3 quarterbacks are looking really good, but I would say that Kenny Pickett is making a hard argument for being starter week number 1. I know that the Steelers probably don't want that to be the case, but if Kenny Pickett just continues to have the preseason he's having, and I'm sure his practices are looking just as good if he's looking this good in game scenarios, there has got to be a strong consideration going on within Steelers brass about starting Kenny Pickett week number 1. The defense is already really good. Offensive line is struggling a little bit, but overall, Kenny Pickett has looked really good so far through 2 weeks, and not really any surprises about that either. He was considered the most pro-ready amongst all the quarterbacks in the draft class, and he's definitely showing it. Jaguars defensive front, really showed up in their game against the Steelers. If you have not followed any of the Steelers stuff, I was reading some articles about this afterwards, and it stuck out to me. The offensive line was getting reamed in because the Jaguars' defensive front was just absolutely dominating them, and you can see it throughout the entirety of the game. Really struggling there. You could tell Trubisky was uncomfortable. He was sacked to end the second drive that he was when he was playing. Steelers have that retooled offensive line, so take it for what you will, but the fact that you're going out there with your guys and you're getting it done and you're giving them problems so much so that the coach is out there calling out his players on a board during team meetings, you did a good job up front there, and hats off to the Jaguars. I think they should be pretty excited with what they've got brewing over there on the defensive front. Looking at the Raiders, we have ourselves an offensive line that is oddly hot and oddly cold at the same time. When we're talking the ground game and running the football, bulldozers, opening up massive lanes for their running backs. But when it comes to the passing game, it feels like they're getting completely clobbered. It's one of the weirdest hot and cold things I've been kind of watching so far in the preseason. 144-yard total on the ground off of 25 carries and a touchdown. Again, ground game looked really good, but then allowing 4 sacks on the night. It was like... And pressure left and right, too. There were a lot of crumbling pockets, a lot of things that didn't really look good. But it's like it's a weird thing because, I guess there are offensive lines that do look like that sometimes, but it's just crazy to see how dominant they are on one side of the ball. And then, the other side, when it comes to the passing game, it's like they can't stop a nosebleed from coming through. Insane stuff to watch. But Raiders, real hot and cold offensive line this week. For the Dolphins, Eric Ezukanma, man, talk about putting on a show. He was 6 of 9 for 114 yards, having catches of 26, 34, 23, and 24 yards apiece, creating separation, making contested catches. This guy, 4th-round rookie, who essentially has sealed his spot on the roster and has probably taken strong consideration to be like wide receiver number 4. I know you have Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Cedric Wilson. Who's after them? If he's not getting consideration for number 4, I would like to know who is. For the Cowboys, no one really shined brighter than Kevontae Turpin. The guy was putting on a highlight reel the entire night. I didn't watch the entirety of that game live. I checked the replays and everything afterwards. But 86 yards on the punt return touchdown, 98 yards on the kick return touchdown. I saw the punt return first, went to bed, woke up, and saw the kick return and was confused because I was like, wait, wasn't it a punt return? And then I realized he did it twice. USFL's 2022 league MVP, stepping into the NFL and showing exactly why he won that award. I want to say I'm a little bit surprised, but he was such a playmaker during the entirety of the USFL season that I'm almost not really surprised that his star is shining bright in Dallas. It kind of writes itself. The Chargers special teams, absolute mess. That's really the best way that I can put it, allowing those 2 returns for touchdowns. Mike Davis even had himself a 32-yard return as well. And then at one point during a kickoff return, I was watching Reed completely just slipped on himself during the kick return, and what was initially a pretty wide open lane for him to kind of hit through, it turned into it was like a 15-yard return or something like that. He literally just slipped under his own feet. So not a great day for the special teams of the Chargers. It was probably one of the uglier things that I saw this week, just watching them get completely torched in the return game. It felt like no real defending of the kick was going on during those returns, and they were just letting Kevontae Turpin eat alive. For the Eagles, Cam Jurgens, I talked about him last week, and I've got to say it again, man. He just looks so good. He typically is winning at the point of attack. He's taken out his first guy, and he's always moving to the next level to find a second guy. And more often than not, he's winning that battle too. If you just go back and watch the replay, look at Cam Jurgens every single offensive snap on running plays and in passing plays. It's really incredible to watch somebody who is a literal rookie coming in and looking as good as he does. He's obviously learning from Jason Kelce, which is awesome. But at this point, Kelce's, he's going to miss some time. You might not even need him to come back with how good Cam Jurgens is looking. I mean, off the jump, talk about a guy who looks pro ready. I think he's going to make, Jason Kelce coming back a tough choice for the Eagles. For the Browns, safety Richard LeCounte. He had himself an awesome showing. If you guys were watching that game there, he had a few tackles that he looked like he was being shot out of a cannon. He had a tackle for loss where he he saw that handoff coming from a mile away, and that was like a 3 or 4 yard tackle for loss. He just completely flew into that hole through the offensive line and stuffed that run immediately. Awesome closing speed. He looks really fast. They have a solid group of safeties already over there in Cleveland, so whether he ends up making the roster or not, this is someone who is going to have to get some looks just based off of how good his tape looked in this week alone. I think in the right position with the right grouping, even if he is just the fourth safety on the roster at the end of the day, this is a guy that definitely needs to get some looks taken at him. Talking about the Bengals now. Looking at Cincy, first-round pick, safety, Daxton Hill had a really encouraging performance. This is someone who kept popping off on the screen for me. He had 6 tackles, a pass breakup, an interception that was really what impressed me the most. The interception came off of a tip pass to tight end to the Giants, to one of the Giants tight ends. I forget the name. I didn't write it down here, but he showed really great reaction and awareness to be able to, off of like a really quick bang play where the ball kind of popped up really fast and went right to him. He was able to, kind of readjust from what he was doing, make the catch diving to the ground, secure it, and ultimately come away with the interception. That's what you want to see from a guy who is going to be a big piece for your secondary. We've talked about the passing game or the passing defense of the Cincinnati Bengals, a handful on this channel here throughout the entirety of last season, and I've mentioned it a handful during the offseason as well. This is a guy that you want to work out, and from what you saw from his performance this week, very encouraging stuff. For the Giants, for a team that's been really a mixed bag at wide receiver, I was super impressed with what Alex Batchman was doing. He had himself an incredible second half, and going 11 catches off of 14 targets for 122 yards, a couple of touchdowns. He was averaging 11.1 yards a reception. I mean, he caught 13 passes last year altogether with a couple of touchdowns. At this point, you have a handful of guys in New York that are supposed to be really good pass catchers, but you got such a mixed bag of results last year. Alex Batchman's a guy that you see that kind of playmaking. Yes, it's against 2s and 3s, but you have to be curious. Okay, well, how would he fare as like the 4th guy, maybe the 5th guy, and, coming in playing against, the defense's 3rd or 4th best corner? If he's playing 2s and 3s and he's lining up against 2s and 3s, maybe he's finding himself open a little bit more often during regular season play as well. I'm not saying he's a guaranteed hit, but that was a really strong performance in that second half, and it's definitely worthy of some consideration to make that roster. And he's bounced around practice squad a lot for the Giants, so after a game like that, might have to consider him a little bit more. For the Ravens, Isaiah Likely, dude. I mean, I talked about him last week, and as if it could have gotten any better. 8 of 8 for 100 yards and a touchdown. You want to talk about trending in the right direction and showing up and being all the hype that is around you, having it pay off. Dude looks phenomenal. The Cardinals, not a ton to write home about until the fourth quarter. It was a very stagnant game for Arizona altogether. It was interesting, though. The big thing that I kind of took away was watching Kyler Murray call plays with the play sheet and the headset. I don't really know what that's all about, but if that's just kind of the Cardinals and Kyler Murray giving the finger to everybody about, the clause in his contract having to study and whatnot, and having him do that, I find it a bit funny. So it was definitely interesting to see that for sure. For the Falcons, it was a pretty encouraging night for both of the quarterbacks. Marcus Mariota looked really good. He was 6 of 10, 132 yards. He had himself a touchdown. Really good throw to Kyle Pitts for 52 yards. That was a really exciting one to see there. Mariota to Pitts. Nice little hook up there. And then the touchdown strike to Olamide Zaccheaus for a touchdown was really, it was a dart. I mean, like he fired that thing right in there, hit him right in the numbers. Great catch by Zaccheaus as well. And then Desmond Ridder, efficient night for him. 10 of 13, 143 yards. Didn't ultimately lead to anything too crazy while he was in, but you want to see efficiency. You want to see good completions. You want to see him, you want to see him look positive. He's not projected to be week 1 starter, so you just want to see some good signs, some good showing, and I think you got that from him. And then for the Jets, the first group offensive line really left me concerned. Pockets were collapsing. Breece Hall got 0 help when it came to the running game on his 4 carries. He literally had 1 yard total at the end of the game. For a team that's dealing with a little bit of offensive line worry right now, you obviously lose Mekhi Becton, and these aren't the ones. I know that. I'm well aware of who was starting for the game for them, but these are your depth guys, and you're already dealing with some issues on the offensive line as is. One of these guys, maybe even 2 of these guys, might have to step in here and there, and for them to look and struggle as much as they did, definitely a little bit of a concern, I would say, for the New York Jets. Again, not anything too concerning because it's not your ones, but we'll have to see how Dwayne Brown looks plugged in there. And if any of these guys have to come in and out, you don't want a leaky offensive line in the passing game. And you definitely want to make sure that those running lanes are opening up. A little bit concerning from the depth of the offensive line here for the New York Jets. But that is it. My 32 takeaways from the week 2 of the NFL's preseason. Again, I would love to hear what you guys took away from this week. I appreciate you all for hanging out and watching. I debuted today my new graphics for the show. Would love to hear your guys' opinion on that if you stuck around this long. But that's it for me. Thanks all for watching. I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.